Welcome to the Locked On Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Rowland. Titans fans, Christmas Day has arrived. The NFL draft is here, and today's show is the official Locked On Titans NFL draft preview episode. I'm going to be going over my top fits for the Titans at every single position. Then we're going to talk about some trade scenarios for the Titans. Where could the Titans trade up to? Where could the Titans trade down to? What teams make sense as partners for the Titans? And finally, I'll give you my ideal 2022 Titans 7-round mock draft. What would be the ideal draft haul for the Titans? Not only that, but Jeffrey Simmons' fifth-year option was picked up by the Titans, so we'll discuss that as well. A big-time NFL draft preview edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. Let's get it!
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Titans fans, it is an NFL draft preview edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. And boy, I'm sure you guys can tell, but I am hyped for the weekend festivities. One of the best weekends of my year every single year, and I can't wait to spend it with you guys. Before we get into today's show, do want to thank you, of course, for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen every day. If this is your first ever listen to the Locked On Titans podcast, make sure you subscribe on whatever platform you do stream. You're going to find the Locked On Titans podcast everywhere and always free. That includes the Locked On Titans YouTube channel. Subscribe over there for free. Smash that notification bell so you know when all my content goes live. Throw a thumbs up on the video if you're watching on YouTube right now. You can follow me on Twitter at TicTacTitans. Follow the Facebook page at Locked On Titans Pod, guys. I'm going to be putting out daily, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content, not only during the season, but all year long. And all throughout the weekend, I'm going to be putting up instant reaction videos, 1 minute to 2 minute instant reactions after every pick. I'm going to be doing 10-minute to 30-minute recaps after every single day of the draft. So much draft content. And then, of course, I'll be wrapping it all up for you guys on Sunday night on YouTube. So make sure that you stay locked in to the Locked On Titans podcast for free all year long. But let's dive in to the big news of the day. Jeffrey Simmons got his fifth-year option picked up by the Tennessee Titans for 2023. So Jeffrey Simmons is going to be on the Titans this year. Nothing's going to change about this year. Everything is going to stay the same. Doesn't affect the cap, anything like that. But next year, Jeffrey Simmons will be on the books for $10.7 million fully guaranteed. Now, here's the reality. Jeffrey Simmons is the second best interior defensive lineman in the NFL behind Aaron Donald. He is going to get a monster contract, probably reset the market, probably be the most money we've ever seen for an interior defensive lineman in NFL history at that point. That's probably where it's going to go. That's fine. Great. Love that. Everything about it. But with that being said, let's talk about my top prospects at every single position. Okay? At quarterback, the perfect fit for the Titans is Desmond Ridder. It's just so perfect. And the more I hear about him, the more I intake what he has to say. Reading his article in the Players Tribune just now before I came on, I mean, yeah, there are some accuracy concerns. There were concerns with every prospect, every great quarterback you've ever seen. There were concerns about them coming out of college. But Ridder is the type of guy you want to be your franchise quarterback, and he's got all the tools. Just needs to clean up a little bit, which he can do sitting behind Ryan Tannehill for one season. I mean, Desmond Ridder is the perfect fit. And I'm going to be releasing my 32-pick first-round mock draft on the channel tonight as well. My personal mock draft, been doing it for multiple years. And not going to lie to you guys, Ridder is my pick for the Titans based on the way the board shook out. But moving forward at running back, Tyler Algier from BYU has got shades of James Conner. I think he'd be a great complement to Derrick Henry with some pass receiving skills to also be a pass catching complement and not just a spell for Derrick Henry. I think Algier and potentially even an heir in a couple of years. Brian Anderson from Alabama, hard runner. The Titans have pass catching running backs in Trent Cannon and Dontrell Hilliard. Get that backup bruiser and Brian Anderson. Wide receivers, Treylon Burks at the top of the list for me. He's the perfect fit for the Titans in the first round. But you want to get in the middle rounds, I think a guy like David Bell from Purdue, he's got some shades of Robert Woods, in my opinion. Christian Watson from North Dakota State would be absolutely perfect if the Titans were to trade back into the second round. Same thing with Alec Pierce from Cincinnati. I think if the Titans were to trade up in the 60 to 75 range or potentially get a pick there from a trade back, Alec Pierce from Cincinnati could be a perfect complement to A.J. Brown. If you get even lower, Romeo Dubes from Nevada. Elite speed, great hands, yards after catch, kick return ability. I love Romeo Dubes if the Titans get a wide receiver at like 131. And then Calvin Austin, if the Titans go at 131, I think he can make some sense. The small speed slot receiver out of Memphis. At tight end, Jelani Woods, Cade Otton, Jeremy Rucker, Daniel Bellinger are all options. But the number one for me is Chig Okonkwo from Maryland. I think he's Jonnu Smith all over again, guys. And I think with having an Austin Hooper and a Jeff Swaim type already in the fold, the Titans need that speed tight end who can move across the formation and catch those little shallow flat routes on the bootleg and turn it upfield for 20 yards. I think Chig Okonkwo has the run after catch and break tackle ability. They can develop the other parts of his game, the route running, the blocking technique, all of that. I think he'd be the perfect fit for the Titans. They could probably get him in the 5th round. So moving forward at offensive tackle, Trevor Penning is just the perfect fit for the Titans, but I don't think that's a realistic match because he's not going to be there, but he would be the perfect prospect to fit for the Titans. Also, in the later rounds, Braxton Jones could make a ton of sense. Kellen Deesh out of Arizona State, I think are guys that make a ton of sense at offensive tackle. Interior offensive line, Zion Johnson, knock it out the park. That's a perfect fit for the Titans. But I heard he's going up the board, and he may be taken in the late teens at this point. So I don't think Zion Johnson would be there for the Titans. Cole Strange, Cam Jurgens, I think they're great fits for the Titans in the middle rounds. Zach Tom as a center out of Wake Forest, I think could be a great fit. And Alec Lindstrom, the center out of Boston College, late in the draft, 4th, 5th round. I think those guys can make some sense. At interior defensive line, Logan Hall would be a nice selection if the Titans go defense in the 1st round. At edge, George Karlaftis. If Jermaine Johnson for some reason falls, the Titans did a top 30 visit with him. And there are some people, like PFF has him ranked as the 32 highest prospect. So if Jermaine Johnson, for some godforsaken reason, doesn't go in the top 10 and is there for the Titans, then you run to the podium and do it. A guy who rushes the passer at 12 and a half sacks in the ACC at Florida State, can drop into coverage, has athletic traits. I mean, that would be a home run. Guys in the mid rounds, Drake Jackson from USC, Myjai Sanders from Cincinnati, I think makes a ton of sense. A guy I love is Western Kentucky's D'Angelo Malone. And late in the draft, a guy like Amari Barno from Virginia Tech, I think has all the tools to be a stud pass rusher if he can just continue to work on his technique. Inside linebacker, only looking at guys later in the draft who can fill that Jayon Brown pass coverage role. JoJo Doman, Troy Anderson, Balin Spector makes some sense for me at cornerback. Excuse me. If the Titans go cornerback in the 1st round, Andrew Booth from Clemson makes sense. If they look in the mid rounds at 90 or later, Cam Taylor-Britt out of Nebraska, Kobe Bryant from Cincinnati, Jalen Armour Davis out of Alabama, I think all are great fits. And at safety, which is a position that people aren't paying enough attention to, I love JT Woods from Baylor in the mid rounds. I just think he would be an ideal person to be able to come in and help as a dime package safety when the Titans go with 3 safeties, but also potentially take over for Amani Hooker if the Titans do have to let Amani Hooker leave in free agency after the year. So those are, I love JT Woods, Dane Belton and Smoke Monday as special teams and Dane Crookshank replacements. I think those guys make some sense as well. But we are going to continue this big time Locked On Titans NFL Draft Preview Edition. We're going to talk about trade options for the Titans. If they traded up, if they traded down, what would make sense? Before we get into that conversation, though, I do want to tell you guys about BlueNile.com, the best place to go this Mother's Day to get your mother, your wife, the special woman in your life, some fine jewelry. They got everything that you need, from diamond jewelry to cocktail rings to tennis bracelets to gold layering jewelry. I mean, literally everything. that you could need. All fine jewelry at great prices as well. Whether you want a statement piece or just everyday subtle elegance, you're going to find it for her at BlueNile.com. And right now, with Mother's Day right around the corner, it's the perfect time to shop for some fine jewelry at BlueNile.com, because Locked On listeners are going to get $50 off of $500 with a podcast exclusive that's only good through Mother's Day. Use the promo code Locked On. Once again, exclusive, only good through Mother's Day. Use the promo code Locked On at BlueNile.com to get that $50 off 500. It's a great deal, and it's a great way to show your mom or the woman that you care about exactly how you feel about them. Shop stress-free and find your forever peace at BlueNile.com today. Titans fans, let's continue this NFL Draft Preview edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. We are going to talk about trade options here. What if the Titans traded up? What if the Titans traded down? What teams would be viable dance partners, and what prospects would they be coming up to get? Before we get into that, I do want to thank you guys again for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen every day. Make sure that you guys check out the Locked On NFL Draft YouTube channel tonight. Live draft coverage of all 3 days of the draft on the Locked On NFL Draft YouTube channel. It's going to be accessible from YouTube at all times. It's going to be free. I mean, what else could you ask for? Go to the Locked On NFL Draft YouTube channel now. Subscribe. Get ready for live coverage all 3 days. We're kicking things off 30 minutes before the draft goes live. So 7:30 Eastern on Thursday, 6:30 Eastern on Friday, 11:30 Eastern on Saturday. All the Locked On experts and local experts like me are going to be breaking down the picks for their teams. I mean, you're going to get better analysis on each of these selections from a Locked On local expert than you are from any national guy on ESPN or NFL Network. So make sure that you tune in to the Locked On NFL Draft YouTube channel for live draft coverage. Very proud of the stuff that our network is doing. Also going to tell you guys, I'm going to be going live before the draft at about 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time before the draft to kind of get you guys ready to go, talk about everything that we're hearing at this moment in time. So I know it's a lot of promo stuff, but I'm just so excited about what's to come for the next 24 to 72 hours. Again, Christmas is here, man. I love the NFL draft. But with that being said, let's dive into this trade conversation. If the Titans were to trade up, go up, I think that some teams that make sense are number one, Baltimore. I think Baltimore makes a ton of sense for the Titans to trade with. Baltimore is always looking to move down, so they're willing to do that. If the Titans, now here's where it gets pricey. If the Titans wanted to move that far, per like the trade value charts that people use, I consulted 3 of them. Basically, the Titans would have to give up 90 and a second rounder in 2023. That's basically what they'd be looking at to move up to 14. Any higher than that, you're going even higher. So for me, giving up 90 and not having another pick from 14 to 131, here's my thing. If the Titans move up with Baltimore, I think it's for Trevor Penning. They want to get there with Baltimore, get in front of the Saints and the Chargers at 16 and 17. Baltimore is probably more willing to move back than Philly is from 15. So to me, that would be the option of getting Trevor Penning and plugging him in as the right tackle for the Titans with Dylan Radins playing left guard. If you had Penning at right tackle and Radins at left guard, and then eventually you could kick Radins out to left tackle when you move on from Taylor Lewan, I mean, that does set up pretty well. I can't lie. But the problem is the Titans have needs at wide receiver. The Titans need another tight end. I think that the need at safety and edge rusher is far greater than people realize. So I just don't think it would be worth it to do that. Now, another option that I see here as a trade-up option for the Titans is the New England Patriots at 21. Yeah, New England has been whispered to want an offensive lineman, an interior offensive lineman, but New England also needs linebacker. New England also needs some secondary help after losing J.C. Jackson. So they could want a cornerback, they could want a safety or a combo like Dax Hill, who can do a little bit of both. So I think New England, and there's history between the two organizations, so I think it'd be easy to grease up a deal. I just think if the Titans wanted Zion Johnson desperately enough, or Treylon Burks, who I think could go at 22 to the Packers. If the Titans really wanted Burks or they really wanted Johnson, which are the two perfect prospects for them, I think going up to New England at 21, what you would have to do for the value is you'd basically have to trade 131 and 143. You'd still have 90. So you'd get Zion Johnson, you'd have 90 to get a wide receiver or a tight end, and then you wouldn't pick again to 169. Is that worth it to get Zion Johnson? Because there is a likelihood here that Zion Johnson, Kenyon Green, Treylon Burks, the top four wide receivers, Trevor Penning, all gone. So is it worth it at that point? Because at that point, the best offensive lineman that you're going to be able to get your hands on would be like Tyler Smith. I don't want to do that. Tyler Linderbaum. I love Linderbaum, but he's just not going to play. He's a center. The Titans just gave Ben Jones new money. Okay, he doesn't solve the problems at all. Taking Tyler Linderbaum would be the same as taking David Ajabo or Desmond Ridder or any quarterback. It's not going to be an impact player in year one. You're not moving Ben Jones to guard, and Tyler Linderbaum is not big enough to play guard. So it may very well be worth it to the Titans to go up there to 21 and just get Zion Johnson. You got a starter at left guard for the next 5 years. You can put Radins officially at right tackle and let him focus on that. Jamarco Jones can be your backup at everything. I mean, Aaron Brewer can continue to focus on being a backup center to Ben Jones, which I think is the only way that he would ever start in the NFL. So that does make things easy. But you just limit yourself in what you can add going forward. Maybe the Titans don't feel like they need to add a bunch of players. Do the Titans need 7 rookies next year? I don't think so. I think 5 would make sense. So maybe this does make sense for the Titans, and they go ahead and do this, take away 2 of those picks, use 169, 216, 204 to move up in the day 3. But the thing is, I think there's a major talent drop-off in this draft after day 2. Day 3 is not a very good day in this draft class. So you're sacrificing any opportunity to move up from 90 and get a better pick in the second or third round by giving away 131 and 143. And I don't know if that's the move that the Titans want to make. Some trade down options quickly here. Detroit has number 32. I think if they gave the Titans number 97 and 32, the Titans would move down from 26. I think some guys who make sense for the Titans at that moment in time would be a guy like Logan Hall, would be a guy like one of the quarterbacks, Matt Corral. Even a wide receiver like Christian Watson or Sky Moore, I think would make sense there. Same thing. Seattle could come up to get their quarterback of choice. They could give the Titans pick 40 and pick 72. Then the Titans could turn around and get, a Sky Moore, a Christian Watson, a George Pickens, and then also get a Cam Jurgens, a Cole Strange, something like that with 72. So I think that could make some sense for the Titans as well. But we're going to move forward. I'm going to give you guys my final ideal 7-round mock draft for the Tennessee Titans to cap off this NFL draft preview. Before we get into that, I do want to tell you guys about betonline.net. It's a perfect place to go for all your betting needs. The number one source for all your betting stats and sports information. The basketball playoffs are going. Major League Baseball has started. You still got UFC and boxing every weekend. NFL draft prop bets. Ladies and gentlemen, you can go make prop bets on who the Titans are going to pick, what position they'll take in the first round, all kinds of different things. Very excited to get into all of that. So make sure you head to their website today or use your mobile device to learn about all the trends and all the action. Bet online, where the game starts. Titans fans, let's cap off this NFL draft preview edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. Very excited for the NFL draft tonight, guys. I can't wait. We're going to talk about my ideal 7-round mock draft for the Titans to cap off today's show. We talked about my perfect prospect fits throughout all the different rounds for the Titans at every position. Talked about Jeffrey Simmons getting his 5th-year option picked up. Talked about trade possibilities for the Titans that would make sense. And now going to cap it off, like I said, with the ideal 7-round mock draft. Before we get into that, I want to thank you guys again for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first to listen every day. Make sure you're subscribed on whatever platform you do stream. Again, I am going to be putting out a special bonus episode on the podcast feed on the YouTube channel of my first round mock draft. Last year, I scored a 42 on Huddle Reports grading system, which would have been top 50 in the world. So I'm not saying I'm a genius, but, I do pretty good with the mock drafts. So hopefully you guys will check that out. I would greatly appreciate it. But to cap off today's show, at 26, in my ideal Tennessee Titans 7-round mock draft, Treylon Burks. He fits perfectly. He's a run after catch guy. He's a country guy who fits in the locker room. He's a guy with better speed than he tested. He can get down the field. He can make contested catches. He's got good body adjustment. Yeah, he needs to refine his route running. Yes, he needs to learn more about playing a boundary receiver spot. But he was great at taking screen passes and bubble screens and gadget plays and taking them to the house and making yards after catch opportunities. And I've been talking all season about replacing the Chester Rogers role. So not only can you get everything that you wanted in Chester Rogers, but you can get it at 6'2" with more speed with Treylon Burks. He would be ideal for the Titans at 26. At 90, either Cole Strange or Cam Jurgens. Go ahead and get that interior offensive lineman. I think Cole Strange could play guard. I think Jurgens is more of a pure center. But at that point, you're not going to get a guy who's going to come in right away and be a day one starter at guard. So get a guy that can be a year two starter, or in Cole Strange's case, maybe a guy who could start at guard right away, but they'll be the heir apparent for Ben Jones. I think that's great value there. At 131, I would love to see JT Woods, the safety from Baylor, again. Versatile guy. He can play deep. He can play split. He's a physical guy. He's not afraid to come up. Now, he's got to get better in run support. He's got to get better with his recognition speed and all that, but he's not going to be a starter for the Titans immediately. He's going to sit behind Amani Hooker. He's going to be that dime safety who could play deep for the Titans and allow Amani Hooker and Kevin Byard to come up and play over the middle of the field and roam and create turnovers. Then, if Amani Hooker does decide to leave in free agency after the year, which is very likely, you got a guy like JT Woods who could slide in, take that starting spot, and you can groom him to be ready for that. At 143, Chigakonkwo, the tight end from Maryland. Again, like I said earlier in the episode, he is a Jonnu Smith clone. At 169, get that running back that can not only spell Derrick Henry on in between the tackle carries and take 5 to 8 carries away from Henry a game to make him last a little bit longer, but a guy who can also potentially help in the passing game and with pass protection. Tyler Algier from BYU. I'll keep pushing that name. I think he'd be a great fit for the Titans. At 204, we're taking dart throws in the 6th round. Amari Barno, the edge rusher out of Virginia Tech. Twitch, length. He's young. Yeah, he needs to refine his technique. Yes, he needs to get better against the run game. But the Titans have Bud Dupree, and they have Harold Landry, and they have Rashad Weaver, and they have Ola Adeni. Let Amari Barno develop his skills against the run. He's basically a replacement for Derek Roberson. He is the pure pass rusher that's the 5th outside linebacker on the depth chart that is being developed to have a bigger role, and I think Barno could potentially fulfill the destiny of Derek Roberson and take over for the 3rd rusher on the team next year. And then finally at 219, I literally put whatever. If you want a guy like JoJo Doman or a Balin Spector at pass coverage linebacker, if you want to dip back into the wide receiver well and take a Romeo Dubes or a Tyquan Thornton, a guy like that, I'm perfectly fine with that. Valus Jones, if he's available, I'm perfectly fine with that as well. If they want to take a chance, I guess, on another tight end, maybe I could live with that. A cornerback for sure would make a lot of sense at the end of the draft. A Jalen Armour, Davis, a Kobe Bryant, if they happen to fall that far. Literally, your last 6th round pick, just dart throw whatever you think could make some sense, and I'll be perfectly fine with that. But that is it. That is the Locked On Titans NFL Draft Preview Extravaganza. We talked about Jeffrey Simmons. We talked about my perfect fits at every position throughout the draft. We talked about trade up, trade down scenarios, and we did my ideal 7-round mock draft for the Titans. Treylon Burks, Cole Strange, JT Woods, Chigakonkwo, Tyler Algier, Amari Barno, whatever they want at the end with 219, doesn't matter. But again, my full 1st round mock draft is going to be out on the feed on YouTube at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time this morning. So make sure that you guys check that out as well. But that's going to do it for me today, folks. As always, I am your host, Tyler Rowland, and this was Locked On Titans.